Okay. Oh! Hello trainers! Professor Palm here, and apologies, I was just finishing up some studies right now because of a brand new research assignment that I've been doing and I really want to share with all of you trainers. So, I'd like to welcome all of you to a brand new series on this channel called Pseudo Study. For this series, we'll be looking at all pseudo-legendary Pokemon that have appeared in every one of the core series games. There is currently a total of 11 pseudo-legendary Pokemon. For those of you who know what pseudo-legendary Pokemon are, great to know. But for those of you who are new to the series and don't know what a pseudo-legendary Pokemon is, allow me to explain. It's very simple. Just like with the name Shiny Pokemon, as well as Evolution, the name pseudo-legendary Pokemon is a fan term that refers to any Pokemon that has a 3-stage evolutionary line, has a base stat total of 600, and requires 1,250,000 experience points to hit level 100. So, I hope that you're all caught up on what makes a pseudo-legendary Pokemon a pseudo-legendary. And out of all 9 regions, we have 11 of them. The most common typing for a pseudo-legendary, of course, is Dragon type. And hey, Dragon is a very powerful typing, so it's kind of hard to not be surprised about that. However, to me, I think that the pseudo-legendary Pokemon that's always stood out the most, and also was the very first pseudo-legendary Pokemon I ever raised, was none other than the King of the Mountain itself, Tyranitar. I know that this is not a Dragon type, but I really am very happy that this Pokemon was the first pseudo-legendary that said, I don't have to be a dragon to be a pseudo. When looking back at all the pseudo-legendary Pokemon we've had from 1996 all the way to present day, there's something much different about Tyranitar than every other pseudo-legendary Pokemon. Other than the fact that it's not a dragon type and something different like Metagross, this is a Pokemon that actually has been around a lot longer than almost any Pokemon on the planet. Other than that unique typing that Tyranitar has, a lot of people claim that it's one of the oldest Pokemon out there, that it lived during the Stone Age with Regirock. Some people even claim that Tyranitar was one of the few species that escaped extinction when the prehistoric days ended. Some researchers say that Tyranitar has adapted so much that its skin is practically made out of solid steel. Is that really the case? Ah! Yep, that's the case. That really hurt. And I will say this, Tyranitar really is an incredible Pokemon that not only has it been around since the prehistoric days, but it's still here and it still lives by the code survival of the fittest. So I can really see why it takes on stronger opponents, because this Pokemon really wants to prove it still is the apex predator like it was back in the Stone Age. There's a lot to talk about with this ruler of the mountain, and I think that it's really cool to do a pseudo study on it, so we can understand Tyranitar better than the rest of its line. So, let's begin. But before we do that, I want to give a very special thanks to my buddies Kurith the Hyena and Dan of Mystery Draw. Both of you really wanted me to do a pseudo study video, and you also really like Tyranitar, so I hope that you enjoy this video to the fullest. This was your idea, and here it comes. But you're not the only ones that I'm going to be thanking today. I want to give a very special thanks and shout out to artist Tecranova for my shirt. Today's shirt I'm wearing is called The Tyrant Within. If you really like these shirts that I wear with this design, you can buy them on Etsy. I have a link to Tecranova's Etsy shop in the description below. So please check her out and tell her Professor Palm sent you. If you think that I look good in these shirts, I think that you'll look even better. So, instead of wearing a silly stock image t-shirt, get a really good design from a talented artist that really pops. While I may not be sponsored, I still just want to say thank you so much Tecranova for all you've done for the channel and for making these amazing shirts. Well trainers, grab your flashlights and your hiking shoes. We're going to go hiking up the mountain and learn all about this incredible monster of the mountain. We're about to go into its domain, and you better be prepared because this Pokemon doesn't back down without a fight. So, let's learn everything we need to know about the incredible King of the Mountain pseudo-legendary itself, Tyranitar! Oh, this thing is heavy. Tyranitar! For the Tyranitar family, or the Tyranitar line, whichever you want to call, it's a 3-stage evolution. For the family line, we start off at the first and basic stage with Larvitar. At level 30, Larvitar undergoes evolution and evolves into the middle stage of Pupitar. And at level 55, we end the evolution at the final stage with Tyranitar. All in all, you need to get to levels 30 and 55 to get the full Kaiju experience. While they don't seem like hard levels to get to, remember, this was back in Generation 2 when rare candies were very hard to find, and while the EXP share existed, it's nothing like it is today. Also, there was no such thing as EXP candy, so getting them to level 55 and 30 was kinda hard. As you see, Tyranitar is the only one that's not the same as the two, as Larvitar and Pupitar are rock and ground type, which have a lot of weaknesses. So, getting this whole family to evolve is really an achievement. For its habitat in the wild, Tyranitar lives in the mountains. It's often said that the mountain that Tyranitar lives on is the same one it lived on when it was both a Larvitar and a Pupitar. Finally becoming the king of the mountain, it claims the entire mountain as its own. The first games Tyranitar ever appeared in were Pokemon Gold, Silver, and Crystal, and yet despite this Pokemon being introduced in the Johto region, it could not be caught anywhere in the Johto region. Instead, it can only be caught on Mount Silver in the Kanto region, but only as a Larvitar and a Pupitar. For the lore of Tyranitar, it's based on a Kaiju, which means giant strange beast. After all, Tyranitar is heavily inspired by the king of monsters himself, Godzilla. However, Tyranitar also draws inspiration from the armadillo-girdled lizard, which are desert-dwelling lizards. After all, Tyranitar also has the ability Sandstream, which does explain a lot. And also, Tyranitar draws inspiration from certain theropod dinosaurs. If that's the case, this is what made Tyranitar the very first pseudo-legendary not to be based off a dragon, but rather a dinosaur. According to the Pokédex, Tyranitar has an insolent nature that does not make it care about any others. They also have short fuses, so they really do not take well to intruders of any kind being in their territory, which of course is the entire mountain that they're living on. You better be careful around Tyranitar, because when this Pokemon rampages, its great strength will start avalanches and it will destroy the surrounding landform around it. Mountains will crumble, rivers will be buried, even towns and cities will be left in ruin in its wake. It's said that maps have been redrawn many times after a Tyranitar's rampage. Tyranitar's body is extremely strong that it cannot be harmed by any sort of attack. Because of this, Tyranitar are very eager to accept challenges against enemies who appear stronger than it. Tyranitar prefers to continue its reign as the ruler of the mountain. This Pokemon really enjoys its reign that it hates to look weak. So, even if it feels like it's having some pain, it'll never show it no matter what. Some claim that Tyranitar's body is as strong as steel. Because this Pokemon really doesn't go down without a fight, some see it as one of the most indestructible Pokemon of all time. Yet despite being told it has a body of steel, Tyranitar does not have a steel type. With all that power Tyranitar has, it's no wonder why so many people know it as King of the Mountain. However, we learned so much about Tyranitar that it's not only the king of the mountain, but somewhere inside, it's hiding a big secret, that it's a monster of the mountain. Oops, did I say big secret? I meant to say mega secret. In Generation 6, because of Professor Sycamore's research, we learned that Tyranitar could Mega Evolve, and if you think it's powerful already, you haven't seen the power of a Kaiju until it goes Mega. Because of the colossal power that poured into Tyranitar when it Mega Evolves, its back split open. Its destructive instincts are the only thing that keeps it moving and fighting. Mega Tyranitar is now more ferocious than ever. It leaves nothing but destruction everywhere it goes. Its powerful blast and strength is so strong that it can even tear apart the mightiest of mountains. Even though Mega Tyranitar will battle, it's unclear whether it's listening to its trainer's orders or if its ferocious nature is what's making it fight. As its anger is so powerful, it cannot be stopped even if Mega Tyranitar wins a fight. Tyranitar has made many appearances throughout the anime over the years. However, the first episode where Tyranitar played a major role was in the Pokemon Master's Quest episode, The Mother of All Battles. In this episode, Ash, Misty, and Brock were returning its lost baby Larvitar to it when it attacked them, thinking that they were a trio of poachers. Seeing its baby come back made Tyranitar very happy, and it stand down, knowing that it was in safe hands. However, Tyranitar was unfortunately being pursued by some bad people, known as the Pokemon Poacher Brothers. They were a trio consisting of Bago, Chico, and Blurt. They were so annoying, even Team Rocket hated them. These Poacher brothers captured Tyranitar, and they tried to go for Larvitar until Ash intervened. They would have tried again, only for them to get away when Pokemon Ranger Mason came onto the scene. As they were getting away, Brock sent his Crobat to chase them so they would not lose sight of these guys. The Pokemon Poacher brothers then stole Team Rocket's balloon to get away with Tyranitar, and for a bonus, they attempted to take Ash's Pikachu and Ranger Mason's Croconaw. Seeing everyone in danger scared Larvitar, and it used the move Screech. Hearing these screeches made the mother Tyranitar very angry, and she blasted the balloon with Hyper Beam. Happy to be with her baby again, the Pokemon Poacher brothers decided that they wanted to take both of them. So, Tyranitar and Larvitar teamed up and blasted their robot into nothing but scrap metal. The episode ended with the Pokemon Poacher brothers, Bago, Chico, and Blurt being captured by the other Pokemon Rangers and sent to jail. As Ash, Misty, and Brock head to Silver City, Tyranitar and Larvitar waved goodbye to them and wished them the best. Every pseudo-legendary is unique in their own way, and Tyranitar has a lot of really cool tidbits to talk about. So, here are some fun facts about Tyranitar. Currently, Tyranitar is the only pseudo-legendary to have a type change when it evolves. While other pseudo-legendaries gain a new typing, Tyranitar has an entire type change, as it goes from Rock and Ground when it was Larvitar and Pupitar to Rock and Dark. Tyranitar is currently the only one of a kind of its species, as it's the only Rock and Dark type Pokemon. As of all 9 generations, we've never had another. This makes it the most unique pseudo-legendary Pokemon, as it shares no other typing to any other. Tyranitar's design heavily resembles a monster designed and illustrated by Ken Sigormi for Volume 14 of Microdesign publishes by Monthly Game Review. However, according to the artist, Sigormi claimed that the monster design was meant to be an original creation that didn't relate to Pokemon at all. On an interesting note, Ken Sigormi is not the one that designed Tyranitar. When Mega evolved, Mega Tyranitar has the highest attack and defense of all Dark-type Pokemon. In the Paldea region, Tyranitar has a distant relative, being Iron Thorns, who also shares a Rock typing with it, but unlike Tyranitar, who's a Rock and Dark, Iron Thorns is Rock and Electric. In Pokestar Studios, in Black and White 2, there's an opponent that you can fight when making a movie known as MT, aka Mecha Tyranitar. And if you look very closely, Mecha Tyranitar resembles Mecha Godzilla. And finally, Tyranitar and Aggron are both seen as rivals in the wild, as both these Pokemon always fight to claim control of a mountain as their own territory. Also, since Aggron is Rock and Steel, while Tyranitar is Rock and Dark, some people oftentimes see these Pokemon as rivals for who's the stronger Rock type. Despite what I said earlier about Tyranitar having that incredible armored skin that's almost indestructible and gives it almost no weakness, Tyranitar unfortunately has the most amount of weaknesses than any other pseudo-legendary Pokemon because of its typing of Rock and Dark. It's weak to 7 other typings. The attacks that this Pokemon are weak to are none other than Ground type, Water type, Steel type, Grass type, Bug type, and thanks to Professor Sycamore's research in the Kalos region, Fairy type. However, these are only ×2 weakness for Tyranitar. Tyranitar's biggest threat is Fighting type Pokemon, because Fighting type moves do ×4 damage to it. Wow, this Pokemon sure has a lot of weaknesses for being called one of the most invincible creatures out there. I guess we should see how strong it is in battle and check out all of its strengths. Having a Tyranitar around can also be very helpful. Even though it has a lot of weaknesses, it has a lot of strengths. I don't think it has enough to make it up for, but the Pokemon that really are weak to this Pokemon with its Dark and Rock type moves are of course Ghost type, Fire type, Flying type, Ice type, and Psychic type. But Psychic type also is a complete immunity to Tyranitar. Because this Pokemon is a Dark type, Psychic moves won't do any damage to it. While this Pokemon may not have a lot of strengths to make up for the weaknesses, at least it has good strengths, and at least it has an immunity. There are so many pseudo-legendary Pokemon we have out there, and I have to say, out of all of them, Tyranitar will always be my favorite. Something that I really think would be really cool about this Pokemon is, since it was the first Dark-type pseudo-legendary when Dark-type was new, do you think that Dark and Steel would have been pretty cool to have, since they were both new typings, and being known as the Armor Pokemon, I think that the Dark and Steel would have fit this Pokemon very well. I'm glad that both Tyranitar and Metagross are the only pseudo-legendaries that are not Dragon, it's good to know that at least the trend has been broken a few times. I don't hate Dragon-type Pokemon, and don't get me wrong, I think plenty of the pseudo-legendaries that are Dragon are great, but I really am hoping that in the future, or at least with Generation 10, we finally get another pseudo-legendary that's not Dragon. Other than its odd typing of Rock and Dark, Tyranitar also has another standout thing that makes it much different than any other pseudo-legendary we've ever had. You see, in the core series games, Tyranitar has never been the signature Pokemon of any Gym Leader, Villainous Team Leader, Elite Four member, or Champion, as every other pseudo-legendary has at least been one of those in every game. Seeing that makes this Pokemon even more of a standout in my opinion, and that's what makes it even more incredible. I'm hoping that maybe one day we get another one of those trainers I mentioned to use a Tyranitar as their ace. Looking back all these years later, I'm really happy that Tyranitar was the very first pseudo-legendary Pokemon I ever raised. Even with all those typings that these Pokemon are weak to, it's definitely worth it in the end. Even though it starts as Rock and Ground, then becomes Rock and Dark, it still has all those weaknesses. And even though these Pokemon can be seen as weaklings and the odd ones out, I think that this is an achievement when you finally get this incredible armor Pokemon. All I can say is, you have to climb a mountain, but as soon as you hit the top at level 55 and get yourself a Tyranitar, you'll feel like Tyranitar as well, because you finally become the king of the mountain. Welcome back, trainers! I hope you had a wonderful hike up the mountain, learning all about Tyranitar and going into its territory. Was it fun, or was it rather scary and you're going to try to avoid mountains for a while? But before we end this, I have a few questions for all of you trainers. When Generation 10 finally comes out, do you think that we should get a pseudo-legendary that's not a dragon type, just like Tyranitar and Metagross? Also, what type should it be? If we happen to get another Pokemon Legends game, what region should it be on? And do you think that Tyranitar should have a regional variant? Also, what typing do you think it should be? For me, I think that Dark and Steel would be great. After all, those were the two typings that were introduced in Generation 2, and it would work well. Out of all 9 regions and all 11 pseudo-legendary Pokemon, who's your favorite, as well as who's the one that you're most proud of? Which champion had a very tough pseudo-legendary that you had to take on in their champion battle? Was it a challenge for you, or did you know their weaknesses and was it an immediate pushover? And finally, after Generation 5 games, did you ever get lucky and find any pseudo-legendary Pokemon out in the wild? And did you catch them? Was it really worth it? Or do you think that it would have been better if you leveled them up to get the full experience to become a pseudo-legendary? I hope that this was a lot of fun for you trainers. If you really like this a lot, I'll do another Pseudo Study video. After all, there's so many to talk about, and there's a lot of lore and a lot of interesting facts that we can uncover about every one of them that's ever existed. So, if you liked what you saw, then please leave a like. If you have any questions, you want to answer any of the questions I gave to you, you want me to cover another pseudo-legendary Pokemon, another pseudo-legendary line, or you want an idea of yours turned into a video, then please comment. And as always, if you like what you saw and you want to see more, smash that subscribe button. And also, please feel free to share me around to all other trainers out there. As a professor, I just want to talk to all the trainers in the world that I can. So, thanks for watching, trainers. Palm out.